I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Tuesday, October 20th, 2020 meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Could we have a roll call?
All right, Bill Brown.
Here.
Amy Adams.
Here.
Shannon Baranek.
Here.
Kara Dudek.
Here.
Cynthia Hoyle.
Here.
Audrey Ishii.
Here.
Susan Jones.
Present.
Jeff Marino.
Here.
Sarthak Prasad. Nancy Westcott.
Here.
And are there any others on this call as well?
Brianna Lawrence is here to present an item on the agenda about temporary pedestrian streets. And then we have some members of the public.
We have Gabe Lewis, it looks like, and then Lily, are you on the call
Lily.
as well?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
And then Ashley McLaughlin.
And Ashley.
Yeah, hi, this is Ashley McLaughlin from RPC. I'm just an audience member. I work with Gabe.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like we have a quorum. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, could we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Audrey, seconded by Cynthia. Any discussion? Could we have a roll call for that?
Bill Brown.
Yes.
Amy Adams.
Yes.
Shannon Baranek.
Yes.
Kara Dudek.
Yes.
Cynthia Hoyle.
Yes.
Audrey Ishii.
Yes. And I think it was Susan who moved.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff Marino.
Yes.
Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. And if you're just joining us and haven't been part of these Zoom meetings, we have to have a roll call on everything as part of the executive order in order to hold our meetings remotely, because it's like I demonstrated, it's hard to tell who's talking sometimes. So everything's a roll call. Approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Did everybody get a chance to look at the meeting minutes from September? Are there any corrections? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Moved by Jeff and seconded by Nancy to approve the minutes. Could we have a roll call for that?
Bill Brown.
Yes.
Amy Adams.
Yes.
Shannon Baranek.
Yes.
Kara Dudek.
Yes.
Cynthia Hoyle.
Yes.
Audrey Ishii.
Yes.
Susan Jones.
Yes.
Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Public input. Do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak? I see one. Okay, Christopher Hansen, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, Bill. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Hi, Bicycle Board. My name is Christopher Hansen. I live in Urbana. I ride my bike a lot, so it's cool that we have a board around to deal with these things. In fact, I ride my bike pretty much multiple times a day, every day, no matter what the weather is. So it's great that you guys exist. I've never watched one of your meetings. The reason I decided to come take a look today, first of all, I heard about what I heard the presentation at last night's city council meeting. But primarily what I wanted to talk to the board about is the new rules, limitations on public input at Urbana public meetings. And it sounds like maybe some of you are somewhat familiar with it. I heard Jeff Marino mention it before this meeting today. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because I believe the new public input rules that Mayor Marlin and the city council have put forth severely put at risk your operation as a board. They're trying to make content-based speech restrictions at public meetings, and the council's public input rules do fall down through the boards and commissions, so it includes you. So I think this is something that your board should take a look at, and all boards should take a look at. My point of view, and the point of view of everyone else I've talked to, besides city legal, is that the rules that Mayor Marlin has created are illegal. They are a violation of the Open Meetings Act. You cannot create content-based speech restrictions. Terribly surprised and disappointed that Bill Brown went along with this. Maybe he wants to explain it to the board after public input. I mean, Bill Brown is on the ACLU locally and was the president of the ACLU. So I don't understand why he's pushing speech restrictions upon Urbana residents. It's wrong. It's a violation of our rights. And I think all of our boards and commissions should go to the city council and tell them that you don't want speech restrictions at your meetings. I overheard Jeff Marino mention earlier something about, the public going to meetings and speaking about things that aren't on the agenda. Well, the Open Meetings Act does not allow you to limit public input to items that are on the agenda. That's been made very clear in POC opinions. So, and in fact, even if it could, public input is on the agenda. For example, it's number 4 on your agenda. So it's an agenda item itself. These are things that you would learn in OMA training, which I think is required. And maybe one that your board wants to talk about, since you probably like to talk to community members a lot, is the new rule that Marlin, has instituted, is the chair, and I think anyone else on the board isn't allowed to have any kind of dialogue with a public speaker. So, for example, if I wanted to bring something forth to your board right now about cycling, and maybe, Bill Brown or one of you had a quick question for me, it would be a violation of the speaking rules for you to just quickly ask me right now. I don't think that helps your board operate in a way that's good. I think you probably do want to, be able to have at least a little back and forth with a community member who comes forward. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of those rules. I don't know what your choices are right now. You could decide not to follow them, and then you'd be violating Urbana ordinance, or you could decide to follow those rules, but then you'd be violating state law. So the city council and the mayor have really put you in an awful spot. So I think you should figure this out and return a response to the city council on what your board intends to do and why. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak during public input? Okay. And I'll clarify that a little bit. The rules allow clarification. We can ask questions of people that are giving public input. They discourage back and forth, like a side conversation or discussion. But I encourage it, if you need clarification from somebody offering public input, you're welcome to. At the city council meeting, it's taken up a lot of time, and if you spend a lot of time with each person, you wouldn't get anything done. But I think we can be a little bit more relaxed on it here. But that's about all I'll say. ACLU, I won't speak for the ACLU. I ran it by them, and they said that their lawyer said there was no red flags in the ordinance, but I do think that, there's potential for it to be a problem depending how it's enforced. So we'll see. So we'll move on, if there's no more public input, to new business. KRT Extension Study. Gabe Lewis is going to present a little bit, not a full presentation, just kind of bring us up to date on the what was presented at City Council a couple weeks ago, wasn't it?
Last week.
Last
Or
week.
sorry, you're right. 2 weeks ago. Yep.
Weeks ago. And he'll be open for questions.
Okay. Uh,
Did you want to show us anything, or do you just want to?
I will. Yeah, I really haven't changed a lot of information. I'm just showing you what we have from the council meeting, but I'm not going to go through every piece of information right now. What I'm actually going to show you here, if you can see it, is the study area map. So I wanted to give everyone some background about what this study is if you're not aware, and to let you know what phase we're in, so that hopefully you all will participate, and anyone listening to this meeting will participate. The Kickapoo Rail Trail that exists starts on the east side of Urbana at Main Street, which is near Aldi, and goes east to St. Joe. And we worked with the city, the Urbana Park District, the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, and the four of us on a study in 2017 and 18 to look at extending it west to Weaver Park, which is near Main Street and Smith Road. And now this current study looks at basically that area, looking west even further to Lincoln Avenue. So it's a 2.4 mile stretch along the Norfolk Southern Railroad. Most of this railroad is considered an active railroad. There is rail track. There's no rail crossing at Smith Road. If you can see my cursor, the first north-south intersection here to the left of the yellow line on the right. So there are existing tracks and existing users at Dart Solo Cup, which is west of Learman Avenue, and then Emulsicote, which is on the north side of the tracks between University Avenue and the tracks, you know, where MTD is, and east of Maple Street in that area. So with this study, we've looked at a number of land use criteria or existing conditions, transportation, existing transportation conditions. We did traffic counts. We did inventories of all the facilities in place, pedestrian, bicycle, transit, crash data. And we looked at a lot of environmental factors, because that will come into play with the development of a trail. Things like soil type, the location of cultural resources, waterways, obviously our natural areas, our parks. So we took all of this into account, and we also broke up this study area into 4 sections that you see on this map. So we numbered them from west to east, and section 1 is Lincoln Avenue to Broadway Avenue, which includes the Carl Hospital campus and downtown Urbana. Section 2 is smaller, from Broadway Avenue to Maple Street, which includes the Save-A-Lot grocery store and Schnucks grocery store, and the railroad bridge over Vine Street. Section 3 is from Maple Street to Learman Avenue extended, and that includes on the north side a lot of not only some industrial uses, but institutional uses, like I mentioned, Emulsicote and MTD. And on the south side, there are some single family homes, a lot that on streets that dead end into the railroad. And then section 4 is Learman Avenue extended to Scottswood Drive. And this does have also some single family residences that are on Main Street with some long lots and backyards that back up onto the railroad, and then some other businesses, and also some open spaces. There's an agricultural field, and then also the Urbana Champaign Friends meeting religious meeting house. So with this, with all of our existing conditions and breaking up the study area, we developed 5 alternatives. And that was to look at what side of the railroad would be best to potentially have a rail with trail on alongside, or a trail alongside the rail, what we call rail with trail. Because there are still active users, we had to look at how close or how far can you build a trail from an active rail line. IDOT guidance says that a minimum is 15 feet that you need to have a buffer from the railroad. And then we've looked at another 15 feet to have for right-of-way for a trail. So you consider a 10-foot trail and then 2-foot just grass buffers, vegetative buffers on both sides, or 2.5 foot. So that's what that second 15 feet is. With that, we then have 30-foot buffers. The alternative maps show where those 30-foot buffers actually are and how they intersect with property lines and buildings and things like that. There aren't a lot of buildings that really fall in that 30-foot buffer, but all of this is to be transparent about what it would take to build a trail, to extend the trail on this corridor. All of the property owners and residents who live on this corridor and that 30-foot buffer touches have been notified by a letter from the city. And that happened before the public comment period opened. So we have heard from a couple folks, but right now there's this document and all the alternatives are open for a 30-day public review in October. And that is available on our website. I'm gonna switch my screen to just show you what the website looks like. And I don't know if you have a chat function here, but I can make sure that you have the URL.
It's in our agenda too, so they should have that. The URL is.
Okay. So I encourage you to take a look, and the very first button is those 5 alternatives. It's the maps. So you have alternative 1, it's color coded for each alternative. It's broken down by the 4 sections. You can kind of see this, and you can zoom in on your own. There's kind of a brown, buffer around the red railroad line, and that shows what that 30-foot buffer is. As you move further east, there are multiple railroad lines. There's a siding, so it's called a siding. So that buffer does get a little bigger, but you can look at those details there. And then following each map is a geographic description. And basically a summary of the conditions in that area. So that is available in the first link so that you're not required to read the whole plan. The second button is the full draft report, and there are 7 chapters available right now. They're also posted individually here, and Chapter 7 public input isn't written yet because we're in the public input phase. And then we will have a final chapter about implementation. And once you've reviewed those maps, there's a comment form. It's the same thing, available as a Google form or as a PDF. So you can fill it out however you prefer. And it basically asks what your preferred alternative is, why you chose that, if there's anything you'd like to change about the alternative, any other comments about this report, and then just some questions about the KRT. How would you use it if it was built, and how often? So we have presented, like Bill said, to the council at the beginning of the month, and we will come back to the council in November or December. This study will be completed, will wrap up at the end of the year. So we do want to get some kind of action from the 3 main agencies involved, the City of Urbana, Urbana Park District, and Forest Preserve, but very much the City of Urbana. So we'll present to the other 2 agencies in November and early December. But like I said, I'm encourage you to take a look and provide your comments through the comment form. And please let others know who would be interested in this project. And we posted it on the KUAT's Facebook and Twitter today, and I know several agencies shared that post too. So if you're a social media person, go ahead and give that a share as well. And I can answer or take any questions if you have any right now. If you don't have any tonight and you want to email me, my contact information is on the website as well.
Great. Thanks, Gabe. Any questions for Gabe?
I have a question.
Okay.
So I read through the report and I thought, well, I don't really have very many comments, but based on what you just showed us, there's a survey in the comment section.
Yeah, on the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So whether or not we want to say anything unique, it would be helpful to fill that out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
I would say, Gabe, I looked at it and I appreciate you showing me where everything was, because I thought, oh, well, sure, I'll public comment. I've seen this before. I know about it. And then I was like, oh, wow, I got to look at all of these hot links plus these maps. And I just kind of left. I just was like, oh, no, I don't know. So as long as, so the real things you're really directing our attention to is draft report, comment form for the online Google comment form, right? Those are the two, if I were to high level it, is that what I'm looking for? Or my high level would be alternative maps.
Exactly. And the comment form.
Okay,
Alternative
great.
maps
Thank
in
you.
the comment form. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I thought, oh boy, I have to look at alternative maps, draft report, plus these other 9 things. And then I was like, I'm out. Annie, I'm out.
We want it to be as easy as possible. So it doesn't require 5 hours of your time, unless you want to use 5 hours of your time.
Yeah, I think the important thing to me was to look at the alternatives and the rankings and the information on why different ones had different rankings and the challenges and what was it, benefits that you had? I forget how you worded it.
The opportunities and constraints.
Constraints, there we go. Yeah, those are pretty important pieces of information.
Mm-hmm.
But I was very pleased with the #1 alternative, and it was #1 by a significant margin. So I was really happy to see that was the one that came up, because initially there were a lot of routing alternatives being looked at.
Yeah, exactly. And the report itself, that's why we have the alternatives pulled out, so that people don't have to feel obligated to look at it. But the report is posted as a whole, and the individual chapters, it's the same thing, just 2 different ways of looking at it.
Audrey?
Oh, yeah, I just wondered how the traffic crash data on University Avenue, how that would impact the trail. That was mentioned as a problem for the north side alternative.
Yeah, we listed that as a constraint in terms of people trying to cross University Avenue to get to the trail if the trail was on the north side. And that was weighed in all the alternatives.
Oh, it was accessing the trail. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On the south side, doesn't that same issue arise, that people have to cross University Avenue from the north to get
It could, yeah. We were looking at a little bit more neighborhood focused of if you're coming from the south to a trail that's on the south side without having to cross an active rail line, what kind of challenges would you be facing?
Other questions? I have one on the implementation step. Do you think, what's that going to include? Would that be like funding strategies, and would that be something that you'll finish by November or December, or would that be longer?
Oh, we would definitely finish before November or December. Yeah, it is going to list like sources that can be like funding strategy, like you said, strategies, funding sources. that the city or others can use to acquire funding for the trail. But I know that there's going to be, I can tell you, a recommendation will be to continued coordination with the other interested agencies, since there have been a lot of interested, we've had a lot of agencies represented in the stakeholder committee, but at the very least, like the Park District and the Forest Preserve District.
And that map that showed the bicycle level of service, well, I think the one I noticed that I was looking at a little more closely was the walk stress level. Did we have those in the pedestrian plan too?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I didn't look at it as close in the pedestrian because it was bigger, but I was amazed how many of those small, low, what I would consider pretty low stress streets had high stress on the map, like Learman, and where there's nice wide sidewalks and side paths and stuff, and some of the neighborhood streets.
Yeah, I think Main Street comes into play because it, if it touches, it's the worst case scenario. And so even if like Learman has a side path or one of those neighborhood streets to the north isn't very long, even when you get to the crossing criteria of that, it can make it a worse, like I said, it's the worst case scenario. So. Okay. So it takes into it. I mean, that plays into the score as the nearest street crossing, things like that. Yep. And with the pedestrian plan, it was at the end of the existing conditions. There's a couple of analyses. So we had pedestrian level traffic stress. It's the same data between that plan and this study. Okay, if there's no more questions, we can move on. Oh.
I was just that, to me, I think the reason they have that higher, the cautions, it's like you only have to die once. Even if there's one problem on Learman, if you have to do a tough crossing at the end, you still have to do that tough crossing. Yeah. I think there were some good points brought up about the comments in the survey. I wasn't aware of that. So I think if we spread it back out to our networks and our email lists and things, we should mention in the email that even if you don't have comments, you should take the survey. You'll probably think of some comments when you do that. I should note, Will, it doesn't, like you're saying, even if you don't have negative comments, if you just support or you think one alternative is best, we definitely want to hear that. Okay. So we can get more input.
I'd encourage everyone to browse through the report too. I think you'll be impressed with the analysis, especially the environmental sections, and how it's going to set us up for a better chance at implementing the Kickapoo Rail Trail sooner rather than later, because all of this pretty intense analysis has been done already. I see we do have one person on public input that probably wants to speak on this topic. Deborah, you should be able to unmute now.
Hey guys.
Hi.
I just had a question. Sorry, I came in a little late. Cynthia, you mentioned the #1 plan. You're referring to the all south side, right? Like the first sequentially listed plan?
Yes, the one that goes along the railroad track right of way on the south side. Yeah.
On the south side. So I read the report pretty thoroughly. So my impression is that from a usability perspective, the all south side makes the most sense because it has the most street access, as is noted in the report, and also it doesn't cross the railroad at all. Was that the general consensus reached also?
Yeah, that was my understanding. I mean, Gabe can summarize it perhaps, but yeah, that was what I got from it. It provides easiest access. It has fewest obstacles comparatively. I mean, there's getting across Vine Street is a constraint, but we have to fix that regardless of which.
Yeah, that exists in all the options, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. On the other hand, I was thinking whatever we come up with, it'll be nice because right now crossing Vine period as a cyclist is kind of precarious. So if we can figure out how to do a grade separated crossing for a cyclist at crossing Vine, that would be amazing.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other questions on that or comments for Gabe? Okay, thanks a lot, Gabe.
Thank you.
I know this was probably an extra meeting for you, but I think it was really nice to clarify some of those issues.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here on behalf of the team.
Okay, next we have temporary pedestrian streets. Brianna Lawrence wrote to me, or wrote to the City Council with some suggestions about during the pandemic, maybe trying some neighborhood level pedestrian streets, and she had some ideas about how we might, how we might give that a try and what it might look like. So I'll just let her describe what she wants to talk about.
Hi, thanks for having me. As Bill said, I did write a letter back in July to the City Council and to the mayor about the possibility of closing some streets some of the time in order to let kids play, but also remain distanced. I think if you've been out cycling or walking, you probably noticed that people are just using the streets and the sidewalk a little bit differently than they did before, with people walking with friends and trying to stay 6 feet apart, and then sometimes walking in the street to avoid each other. And especially when the playgrounds were closed, I noticed a lot of kids just riding back and forth on their bikes up and down the street with their friends because their parents had determined that that was a pretty safe way for them to play together. The proposal that I sent advocated using the system that we already have for block closures for block parties. I think that while it would be nice to sort of have some top-down planning if you wanted to create a network of streets, that this is really a democratic way of allowing people to decide whether or not they want to close their block to let kids play on it some of the time. The block party threshold is pretty high. It's 75%, which might be an obstacle, especially if you're talking about closing down streets for more than one afternoon. If you wanted to make it a more regular occurrence, I think that would make sense. Let's see. So we lived last summer in Belgium for the summer, and they have some different rules about streets that accommodate cyclists and pedestrians and have a lot more kids cycling there than we have here. So the two main ones are on bicycle streets, the cars are not allowed to overtake cyclists, which means that the streets aren't closed, but for the most part, people in cars avoid them because you can end up behind, someone like me on a bicycle with 4 kids and have to go really, really slowly. And the other category of streets are play streets, which are only around during school holidays and during the summer. And in those streets, cars have to yield to kids who are out playing in the street. And so that's less of a network. It's just, a block that every school holiday and summer people know will be closed. Do you have any questions?
Hey, I have a question. How do they close the streets? Is it just signage, or do they actually put up barricades?
They put up a plastic barricade right now. That's my understanding when I've seen block parties happen.
They are doing this in a number of cities in the U.S. right now. I've posted several examples of this on Facebook and my Champaign-Urbana Cyclist Facebook page. In fact, I just posted a Street Films video of, I think, 34th Street in New York City, and you can get an idea of how it works. And when they say close the street, what's really going on there is that people can still access their homes in their cars. They are not they're not blocked from getting there. It's for through traffic and other, sorts of vehicles. I'm assuming you'd still need to allow deliveries and things like that, but that the pedestrians and the bicyclists have the right of way. And so I think this group has been talking about this for a while now, and we're all, more than 100% in favor. And we would love to see this happen. And it's been a question of how do we make it happen? And I think what we really need is people like you, Brianna, to help us make this case to our elected officials, talk to our elected officials before council meetings. I mean, that, in my opinion, really having these discussions at a council meeting is not the way to do it. We need to be having the discussions with them one by one, and then bring the item to get forward for the public conversation. So that would be my suggestion, and maybe we could, some of us could work with you. We only 2 or 3 of us can meet with you at a time to help flesh out a proposal. But I think this group, I can't imagine anybody in this group is opposed to the idea. There may be differences of opinion about implementation.
Okay, thank you. I'd be happy to work with anybody on this.
I think
I'm like, do it.
I think what appealed to me about it was the comparison to how we implement block parties, because that's existed for a while, and there is a procedure for that. You take a petition down your block and get 75% of the people to sign to say that they're in favor of it, and then they close for a certain number of hours. But kind of going off that model, that would be a good place to start. We might, you might think about setting up a weekly time of a certain number of hours or something like that. The other option, and maybe Shannon would want to weigh in on this, the city engineer always has the authority to try experimental treatments. So on an experimental basis, I think you could argue that it could be in the city engineer's discretion to say, if you get so many signatures on your block, I'll give it a try, and we'll see how it works. Did you want to comment on that at all, Shannon? Have you thought about that?
One big thing that I'll get pushback on is public works staff time and then fire and emergency services. I know there's ways to get around that. Other places have done it, but I'm just saying, like, that's where my sticking points are going to be is getting public works on board with it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Shannon, what do you mean by public works? What would you be asking them to do?
Putting out barricades. I know.
And then like, fire, would it be talking to, and then you were saying we'd also need to talk to fire to help support you. We would need to talk to fire people? Well,
because police and fire are very sensitive to any kind of road impediment, because if there's an emergency, they're going through. And they don't actually like to run over barricades. So they need to know exactly where the barricades are, how long they're going to be there, when we're going to take them down. Like, it's, we really need to make sure they are on the same page.
And a quick question is, what if we were able to fund, I always call them human-sized orange cones, like those round circular cones that are like probably like 4 feet tall, because they wouldn't then be barricades. We'd be dropping cones, and the cones would say, this is a play street, or would something, if we could somehow get money for those, would that be a workaround for everybody? Because those could just stay out there.
Well, it's not necessarily the cost of the barricades, because we have piles of barricades at Public Works. It's the people putting them out, monitoring them, make sure they're in place. Because even by road construction, when I had a road completely shut down, people do get out and move things around. So someone's going to have to keep an eyeball on them.
Yeah, I think we can work on that. I think that the possibility exists for the neighborhood to facilitate that we could have monitors appointed in each neighborhood to make sure that those are in place. And you know, we are off, what they've often done for our bike rodeos is they deliver a pile of barricades to a certain location and we set them up and take them down. So I think the neighborhood, we can certainly work out those kinds of issues. And I think also there is plenty of grant funding out there. I'm constantly getting applications, requests for doing projects that provide us with these these opportunities for people to walk and bike more in cities. And so, you know, we could even apply for some funding to provide additional signage and other things like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. There just has to be a willingness to work with the public and be creative and resilient in responding and making sure that this will work.
I would just like to add the 75% threshold is pretty high. My neighbors wanted to do a block party and they just were like, yeah, we're not going to do this. This is too hard. And these are very much go-getters. I mean, these are people who are all about talking to all the neighbors. And my street that I used to live on has lots of little kids that are trying to bike on it. And I've talked to everybody on that street and we were all on board and it just, nothing happened. It never came together. And it was very frustrating for me because I would watch families try to bike and they're like, I'm like, well, where are you going to try to bike to? They're like, well, we got to try to get across Washington with a 3-year-old on a bike, right? That's terrible because there's no crossing on the entire Washington. It's just a freeway. So it's, we desperately need something like this. We desperately need a network of some kind. I go back to, I've seen other cities do this and they're not the blue barricades that I see get dropped for different events. I see what I think are really effective are those round orange cones, those round, large orange cones that are like 4 feet tall and circular. Because those just really do actually, I almost actually bought one and put it out in my house on Wabash because cars would, I was in the middle of the street, so cars would be reaching their fastest point in the middle of my street. And I knew if I just had one of those orange round things, because I did test it out with other objects, I'll be honest, you know, that they would slow down because they don't want their car to be hurt by the large orange thing. So I just think there's ways to do this, to create networks. And people can still clean streets, they can still, you know, clear snow or whatever needs to happen. So yeah, thank you, Brianna, for bringing this. This is really definitely something we're all on board with and we have desperately wanted and we've just not gotten any help for it. So we're just kind of at a loss.
I would be happy to work on it. I do know that the 75% threshold is really high for block parties. The only block that I think I've seen successfully do it year after year is Michigan, maybe. Mm-hmm. Like one block of Michigan, they have a tradition of doing an annual block party. But
yeah,
I
the
don't
600, 700 block.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think the 400 block of Nevada has had it before.
Mm-hmm.
A few here and there that can do it. I guess you have to think about the alternative though. If you have 40% of if you make it 60%, you have 40% of people mad at you, then that's not very pleasant either. But probably, I don't know how they work it if people aren't home. Or, you know, there are times when people are on extended vacation, especially during the summer and stuff. So I don't know how they count that. But I don't know, maybe it'd be worth like, well, it might be a little too early, but I think maybe getting together with some city staff, the mayor and Shannon and maybe Carol, and seeing what we can work out as far as some kind of experimental.
What is the residential speed limit in Belgium?
So I don't remember what it is, but the town that I was in had gone through, you guys are probably familiar with the Groningen circulation plan? Does anybody?
Yeah, I remember reading a little bit about that.
So basically it divides the city into parts. And so it makes it really difficult to travel through a neighborhood. You have to go out to Ring Road and then out, you know, and back into the center to get from one neighborhood to another. So that's been implemented in Ghent and in Leuven where we were living. And so the only roads that had a lot of cars were these main roads between neighborhoods. I would guess that the speed limit on those roads was like around 30 or 35. But I don't actually drive, so I'm maybe not the best person to gauge that. And then they combine that with these bicycle roads where you had to go really slowly if you were in a car. And those were just like bicycle freeways in times when people were commuting.
But we have my block just down the next block over from mine. Somebody set up a basketball hoop on the street, on the curb facing the street, and that is played with from kids, pretty much boys, I would say, of all ages, from university to children, and it's really pretty amazing. So when I'm going down the street, if I'm on a bike, I'll hop on the sidewalk to avoid interrupting their game. And if I'm driving, I'll go around. I'll go to a different street. So when you say the cars yield to the children, do the children get out of their way then? Because if they're having a basketball game, you can't really go through unless the children get out of the way.
Yeah, so they used the kinds of barriers, the plastic barriers that we have for the block parties. So the ones that are along bar, and it'll say like Play Street. So the person has to get out of their car. They move the barrier aside. They're only people who are going to their where they live on that block.
Oh, it's not being used as a through street.
It's not used as a through street at all.
Oh,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the case for like 34th Street and all the streets they've closed in New York and Seattle and Chicago. That's what they've done, or not for through traffic. But the other thing I was going to mention is that, yeah, also doing what is called bike boulevards accomplishes very much the same thing. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly plenty of information on how to do bike boulevards. And I think that there are some places that we could take a look at that. It doesn't stop traffic from going to local residences and businesses, but it does discourage through traffic. And that's, I think, really what we're talking about here is discouraging people who are going from point A to point B and don't want to go any slower than they have to.
Yeah, and I realize it sounds like a hard thing to implement here, but functionally we have a lot of neighborhoods that are like that have a lot of cul-de-sacs that really discourage through traffic already. Just not the one that I live in. So.
Deborah, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I had two questions. What's the permitting process if there are vacant houses? Because there's a number of vacant houses on my street. How does the 75% calculate?
Yeah, I kind of asked about that too, or somebody wasn't home or something. So I don't know to ask about that. You don't happen to know, do you, Shannon? Do they take that out of the 75% if they know there's a house vacant, or some houses vacant?
I have no idea who that permit even goes through, so I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
So just a random, so my neighbor 2 blocks to the north, I was going door to door, and she closes down the block she initiates like the process. She goes gets signatures from the neighbors. So that's Division Avenue, which runs parallel to Broadway. So apparently she manages it, at least every other year, she told me. Obviously, I don't know what it is in times of COVID. I had another comment. Oh yeah. I can't imagine anybody would object to closing the street to through traffic if you can still get to your driveway. Like, what possible problem could you have with that? Like, oh no, there's fewer speeding cars in front of my house.
I can tell you, just based on my construction this summer, a lot of people object. Anyone who lives near the street who's used to using a cut through, believe me, they object for whatever reason they can fathom under the sun at that point in time.
That's people using it as a cut through, though.
Right.
Right. Like if you just want to get to your own driveway. And anyways, I know this is the wrong crowd to ask because it's kind of preaching to the choir here.
But car culture. Oh my gosh, I can't take my car there. Oh, it's car culture.
Anyways, I'd totally be into this for my street, and please include me if there's like a task force or something. since I know only a few BPAC people can be on any meeting because of open meeting rules.
Yes, are there any ideas from commission members about how we could proceed?
I like the idea of a what Cynthia mentioned, which was a network, more of like a boulevard system, because like the little kids on my block that really want to ride their bikes, they can't go anywhere, and it would just be nice. I mean, and when I lived over on Wabash, there's this whole network of these funny little windy streets, and there was no it just would frustrate me because it would have been so simple to create it reminds me a lot of like campgrounds. If you've ever been on a campground, the street is set up in a very similar manner, which is why I fell in love with it. And cars there have to drive 10 to 15 miles an hour. They're very thin streets. So to me, it just, yeah, I feel it's like setting up a network and saying this works here. And I also would like it to be in neighborhoods. You know, a lot of the street implementation happens in neighborhoods where people have a lot more money. It would be nice if we really focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and made sure that these are streets where, you know, people who, you know, and maybe they are going to fight back and say, no, I don't understand why I have to drive 10 miles to get to my house. But I do know, like in my block and where I used to live, people would park their cars in the street to try to slow down cars. They would try to do anything to make those streets safer for them and their children and their neighbors. So I think there would be a lot of, there would be a lot of, I think, encouragement for this. So anyway, so yeah, way forward, I'm not sure. I'm not good at that.
I know
yeah.
Our bike master plan does mention, what do they call it? They call them bikeway? No. You mentioned it earlier, Cynthia. But it mentions the bikeways or the greenways in several places.
Bike boulevards?
Yeah, the bike boulevards type of idea. It didn't make a lot of specific recommendations, but it did, in general, encourage that kind of.
And bike boulevards was deemed too bikey, like they wanted to call it more a green boulevard.
Something like that. But I think part of it is, I think, taking this first step of trying to get a test so that people feel more comfortable with it. I think if we tested it in a few areas and you know, people liked it, then I think that would make it easier to come to eventually get a network. But I think that's a great point about inclusion, and maybe if we do a test, we could ask each council member to nominate a or something, so that at least it's spread out around the city. Just, you know, a thought. I don't know. Any other thoughts?
You know, Bill, I like that idea because then it's not happening to the neighborhoods. You know, people feel like it's something they have a say in, and it's not angry neighbors. It's them saying, I'm going to actually bring this to my neighborhood, or I'm going to, you know, yeah. I like that idea a lot. So steps forward, that is where.
Okay, well, I don't think, I mean.
Are we talking about, you know, a single block or 2 blocks, 3 blocks, or, you know, a 10 block route? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I think, I don't know, Brianna, you were thinking more like a couple blocks at a time for. I mean,
So I think
the block party idea, it would probably be a lot smaller.
Yeah, I think if you could go in 2 directions with it, and one would be to say that the neighborhoods have total control and you go through the block party system and rely on people to sort of choose themselves which streets they want to do that with. And then another would be to say, we're going to pick streets that make sense for that to happen on.
I'm sure there are streets that just won't work. I mean, obviously any major streets won't work, but so engineering would have to kind of filter the requests or have some criteria to say, no, I mean, Illinois Street is a fire lane. We can't do a lot with that. So Illinois.
Can't use bus routes.
Yeah,
There's some
bus
other-
routes,
Yeah.
things like that. So there are things, you have to work around.
But my little corner of Anderson is like prime for that. Prime.
Yes. And I'm obsessed with family-friendly fair lawn. It is 1 mile. One
Yes.
mile, exactly. People would use it all the time to get their 1 mile in from the school to, I always
Wherever.
name it Cottage. Is it Cottage Grove? That fast moving.
Is that a bus route?
Not my stretch, except when
No.
there was construction.
Okay.
Yeah, Fairlawn has buses on it.
No, right, but I'm on Anderson. Like Anderson between
And
Washington.
And Shannon, family-friendly fair lawn, there are no sidewalks. There's no sidewalks in the whole neighborhood I live in. There's no people. You just have to. So what I would love would be if there was actually just like a place for people. There was paint on the ground, and people could walk and bike within that paint area and feel like that was a space for them. So
Yeah, those are advisory. Yeah, those are advisory pedestrian and bike lanes. Well, I would volunteer to help with the task force, but I've got Vision Zero on my plate, so I can't take on another task right now. So someone else is going to have to take the lead on meeting with this. I'm happy to help, but I just can't be the driver.
Okay, anybody want to take a lead on this?
I'm tempted to help out on it.
Well, if you get the name, I'll help you.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to help too.
Okay.
Annie, if you sign your name up, like we've done this before, the three of us, we work well together. We do.
Okay, I'll talk with Carol and the mayor. I think you ought to meet with staff and get
Yeah.
feedback from them to see what's going to work. So maybe if Shannon's willing to meet with Carol and the mayor and the three of you, Sue, Annie, and Nancy.
Yeah.
So can we do that with me being on both BPAC and the city staff? Would I violate the open or the too many
So
people?
you would, yeah. Okay, so yeah. So either two of you and Shannon, or else you could meet.
Right.
Okay.
We'll figure out which two.
Figure out something. Okay. Okay.
And then we'll email the other one and say this is what happened, and we're good. We'll be good.
And
see when they
so
have time.
we would meet and try to talk with them, and then I think would next steps be that we have like Brianna and Deborah and all of us, we would present to city council the idea. Is that the next thought?
Well, I think
obviously BPAC or
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what are you thinking, Bill? That's what I'm
I
trying
think
to.
it'll probably have to be discussed some more at BPAC. And sorry, Brianna, I hope you realize nothing works fast. I know you started this in July and it's pretty winter or practically winter, but it looks like the pandemic is going to go on for a while. So maybe by March we'll have something figured out. So yeah, I don't know, even maybe over the winter you want to try something, but yeah, let's try to set up a meeting with staff and the three of you. And then if you can work out we don't have to be involved, but if you can work out a suggestion, I think it'd be good to bring it back to BPAC. And it may not need council approval if it's just, if it's going to be a trial. So I'd say talk with staff and I'll give them a heads up about it. And, I would definitely not try to push a grand idea at this point as far as a network of connectivity and everything. We want to get there eventually. But I think right now we're looking for a trial.
Pilot project.
And decide that they like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a fun thing.
And by the way, there is a grant application due November 5th through America Walks that has funded exactly this kind of a project.
Oh, cool.
And so if you all want to take a look at that and throw an application in there, it certainly couldn't hurt.
Okay, thank you.
There are examples of the previously funded projects, and so you can take a look at that.
Okay, thanks a lot. Any other final comments on that before we move on?
I was just going to say you could almost come and see it in action on Kohler almost any day.
Yeah.
It's completely unofficial, but Kohler's actually a through street, and so it's all the more amazing that the kids have taken it over. And they get out of the way, you know, if you insist on driving through. They haven't been hostile.
There are streets here and there. People will put a basketball goal out and things like that.
Yeah.
I do caution on those basketball hoops because I have insider knowledge that come wintertime, they will get a nasty gram from the city telling them get them out of the right of way.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if they leave them, but I have seen people use them like for a day out there.
Oh, no, they get left on the street and they get a visit from the city.
Okay.
I know, yeah, and just to end, like as a child growing up, we played in the street all the time, like all the time. And when a car, you know, it would just be like, car coming, okay, step aside. And that street now, the traffic is moving crazy fast. You wouldn't even think of doing it now. And it's the exact same size street. It's just the cars are way faster and people have become a lot more privileged about driving and feel a lot more that the streets are only for moving motorized vehicles. So it's kind of personal to me, this situation. I mean, everyone pays for these streets. I don't know why we keep pretending only the minority of people pay for them and the minority of people get to use them however they want. It's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I agree that it's one of the things I absolutely love about the neighborhood is seeing those kids alive on the street and taking it over. I don't feel a moment's frustration about it. I can't imagine who would, unless they're completely lost in their, whatever their tiny 1 second objective is.
Well, I can tell you, Audrey, I mean, people are driving nuts right now. I mean, I have cars passing me all the time on the left, all the time. I was biking through Lincoln in Illinois. A car was racing down Lincoln. They had a solid red. And because I am a very careful cyclist, I watched the car. And the only reason that car actually stopped in the middle of the intersection was because I threw my light at them and I would be dead. So people right now are driving nuts. I am seeing people drive down, blow red lights on Green Street, purposely drive around cars, look, and blow. At 7 o'clock, I'm seeing cars blow through Lincoln Avenue, drive up to Lincoln. They're figuring out on the Green Street, MCOR, how fast they can drive from, I believe, it's Goodwin to Lincoln Avenue to make a left-hand turn on red. I mean, it's, I'm speechless. I'm just absolutely speechless. I've never, I mean, I was just stunned when I was biking home the other night and I saw this car racing down Lincoln and I was like, that car is not actually stopping. I'm in the middle of the intersection. I swear I have a green light and the car just stopped, you know, skidded to a stop after I just turned because I slowed down, turned my light on the car and I was like, you know, what I said, I'm sure you all know what I said. And then I was like, this is insane. And then I just kept going.
I assume that what's driving it is a level of frustration. Everyone is saying this. I mean, I've noticed this too. Some sort of frustration, I guess, because where are you going? I mean, there's no place to go, you know, except the usual, and it's not very exciting anymore since the usual is just what's necessary. I don't understand it. I'd love to know what the reason is other than just a kind of pent up frustration, but I have heard this everywhere. And I think the statistics are even showing it.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like another agenda item.
Sorry.
Yes, totally.
We're venting.
Just before we wrap this up, Shannon, I wanted to verify something when we were talking about getting together with you. I know we have a temporary public works director now. Is that person the city traffic engineer now, or the city engineer? Who's actually our city engineer now?
So right now, I really have no idea. Right now, Justin still has the temporary title, but the new public works director is a licensed engineer. So I don't actually know. We do have job postings for full city engineer and assistant city engineer currently up. So those positions are out for hire currently.
Okay. So right now, Justin probably would be the one that could approve something. Okay.
I would, so Justin is a very smart person, he's a very capable engineer, but I would suggest asking me first so that way I could spin it in a way that I think could get past him.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it'll take some staff discussion and try to figure out what's doable on which streets and things like that. But I think we have a little bit of direction now. I really like the idea of at least initially modeling it after the neighborhood block parties, because that does require some buy-in from the neighborhood, and that should reduce the amount of resistance. So I really thank you, Brianna, for bringing this up and getting us a little bit more motivated on this again. And hopefully we can make something happen.
Well, thanks for having me, everybody. It was enjoyable.
Good to meet
It's
you.
good to talk to other cyclists. Thanks.
Okay, let's move on. We have an agenda item on youth member. How did I say it? Youth representative on BPAC, and I sent out a proposed change to our bylaws that basically just mirrors what the Sustainability Advisory Commission did, because we know that's legal and the city attorney already reviewed all that. So it would add someone between, would give the mayor the ability to add someone between the age of 14 and 18, just serve a year at a time up till their 18th birthday, basically. And then, you know, they could apply as a regular member then and become a voting member, but the age 14 to 18 person would not be a voting member for legal reasons. As far as if we voted to make any obligations, which we don't really do hardly ever, but in theory, the city council could ask us to recommend something that would obligate the city. And then we would have to vote on something that would actually have an obligation that they wouldn't be able to. But for most things, for advisory things, they could still vote and everything. So are there any questions on the suggested amendment to our bylaws that I sent out, or on our bylaws in general? We haven't really looked at them in a while.
Hey, Bill, I had one question. I think the first part of I don't have it in front of me, but in the first part of the sentence said from time to time, the mayor will, why the time to time? Why not just when there's an opening or when there's an application, the mayor will appoint a student representative?
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds a little bit like Jim Simon language. I imagine so it doesn't pin somebody down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kind
of what I thought too.
It is
I
kind
thought
of
it was a little vague though,
optional.
because I guess there could be an opening for, 5 years, and BPAC is like, how come the mayor hasn't nominated anybody? And then we go to the bylaws and it says, well, it does say from time to time.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. Just
Yeah, no, I think
it.
I think it is kind of like a good catch-all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't answer. I don't know. I kind of wondered about that too, but I didn't consider it
It's fine.
Yeah.
And it looked to me like this was not one of the 11 members, it was an additional member.
That's right. The city code already says that we have 11 members and that we're all voting members. So I didn't try to change that. And that's the way Sustainability Advisory Commission implemented theirs too. So that way we don't have to have anything passed by city council to change city code. We're just changing our bylaws. So that's just up to us and the attorneys, but
this is not about that proposal, but the only other question I have is would we ever want to discuss changing us from Bike Pedestrian Advisory Commission to active transportation instead of it, kind of I sort of feel like we pigeonhole ourselves with the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Commission. That's just me, but I don't know if active transportation is a better.
I think as a layperson might not connect active transportation to what they do on a bicycle. I don't know. That's just kind of my feeling.
And just what about our gold level status. I knew we have to have a BPAC to have gold level status, so if we change our designation, we might change that.
Yeah, I don't know if the name, yeah. I don't know. Could be another discussion, I guess. Any objections to, well, is there a motion to amend the bylaws as presented?
I move to amend the bylaws as presented. I think it's a great idea.
Thanks. Moved by Audrey. Is there a second?
I'll second. Yep, Jeff.
Jeff, okay. Moved by Audrey, seconded by Jeff to amend the bylaws as presented. And you have a copy of that, don't you, Shelby?
Of the amendment?
Yeah.
I do have that in my email.
I can send you a clean copy without the red line version.
Okay.
How are we thinking of recruiting this member? Do we have a plan to put out a notice, or is this going to be sort of an open call, or talk to the schools, or?
I think we should put out a notice. I mean, we need to, I was going to try to remember during announcements to try to get the word out that we're looking for a member to replace Leo. So we need to have people fill out applications. I think the process would be the same. There's an application form. If you go to boards and commissions on the city website, there's an application form that's the same for all boards and commissions. You just fill that out to apply for the BPAC board. So we need to ask for somebody to for people to fill those out if they're interested now to replace Leo. And then also, if this is approved, then that's the same thing for the youth member. I have talked to Diane about this, and she thinks it's a good idea. So I don't think there's any objection there. But yeah, so it would be the same kind of recruitment process. If you know of anybody that's interested, just direct them to the website and ask them to fill out the application. And the mayor would make the appointment, and the city council would confirm.
We could probably put it on the neighborhood websites.
Yeah, Audrey, you have connections in the school, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I was asking. And I was also thinking, how do we reach out to some underrepresented neighborhoods maybe for another BPAC rep?
Yep. Okay, any more discussion on that? If not, could we have a roll call vote?
Bill Brown?
Yes.
Annie, did you second?
Oh, I didn't. Jeff did.
I seconded.
Oh, okay, sorry. Annie?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And Nancy?
Yes.
Okay.
Did Jeff get to vote?
I vote yes.
Okay. Yeah, you should still call. Even if somebody seconds it, they could vote against it. That happens at council like once a year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that motion carries. Thanks. The other thing I have on the agenda, I added kind of late, I think we're all frustrated with the cyclist deaths on the rural highways. And it's not directly in our mission to, it's not exactly under our jurisdiction, the rural highways, but obviously we have recreational cyclists that ride on these highways. And it is in our mission to support regional connectivity and things like that. So I think, if we're interested in it, I'd be willing to put together some kind of resolution to Illinois Department of Transportation to suggest prioritizing short segments of rural highways using all the tools we have available, all the data analysis tools. And Cynthia might have some more ideas about what's available. I know a couple years ago when I was at the National Bike Conference, one of the things we were lobbying for was access to a particular software or system that would be distributed among the states and would be used to help analyze, where the bike traffic is and where the crashes are more likely to occur and things like that. And I can show just a couple of, let me see if I can share this. I'll just show a couple of images that you can just get from Strava, the Strava global heat maps. Yeah, I think I can share that if I can get the screen real estate here.
Bill, I also have a letter that Ride Illinois sent to IDOT on the issue of how they're building rural roads. And I should also add, by the way, that the way that it's currently being done does not appear to meet the requirements of Federal Highway Administration to accommodate all roadway users. And so I think there needs to be some serious discussions about this. And as citizens, we should speak up. And I would be happy to share that letter. I've got it pulled up on my computer. If you want me to do a share screen, I can just show you that quickly. But in any case, that we have.
Has Ride Illinois put the letter on its website?
Pardon?
Has Ride Illinois put the letter on its website at all?
It might be there. I'm not sure if I can tell you where it is. I can try and find it. I would think it would be under advocacy or legislation. I'm not sure which, but I certainly can share a copy.
Okay, yeah, if you could send a copy to Shelby, she can send it to the rest of us.
Okay.
So can you see this okay on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar with heat maps. So Strava is a regular activity tracking app. People can download on their phones and connect their GPSs on their bikes to it. And for running too. Right now I just have it showing the bicycle usage. So this color map shows the high usage in red. This is 150 going into Mahomet from the west and going through and then coming out this way. So you can see where it's blue and light, it's not used very much. Where it's red, it's used a lot. Where the most recent death occurred was somewhere in here, stand. So obviously it's really hot there. I mean, that's where it changes from 45 to 55, the speed limit picks up. So with a little bit of data analysis, you can look at things like that and overlay it with speed limit and usage. There's one little spot over here by some of us are probably familiar with, where people use it to basically keep going across the interstate. Not a lot of options to get across the interstate there. At least here they have, a 3-foot shoulder with a rumble strip. So you have about 2 feet to ride on, maybe 2.5. Up here, there was no shoulder.
Which is 2 feet is not enough with a rumble strip. Yeah.
So the kind of resolution I was thinking about would emphasize that there's data out there, and I'm sure that there must be some analysis going on, but I looked in all of Champaign County and there's only like half a dozen of these kind of areas that are relatively small on state and county highways. Another one was where Race Street hits the county highway down by coming out of Philo. It's over here. Right here. Race Street comes, people that aren't familiar with it will come down and be like, oops, there's no place to go. So then they go this way and then they go down. And that's, this is Philo over here. But there's
Bill, does it show you how many people make the red? Like, do you know what those numbers are, or how long this was collected
not on the
for?
free version.
Okay, yeah, because
But it's available. If IDOT wants to spend some money, they can get the metrics. And that's just, this is one app, this is Strava. There's a couple of other apps, but I think this is one of the largest ones. But all that kind of data.
Okay. Yeah, because people like, I have Strava, but I won't use it sometimes, and I won't, why?
A lot of people don't.
But it's one of the things, you always go back to. You count, people count what's important to them, and we just do a terrible job of counting non-motorized vehicular use. So, and I frankly avoid all these things. I would love to bike out to Allerton. I'd love to bike out to a lot of these places, but I won't.
I do it regularly, and there are some stretches that are less than ideal, and there are a lot of people doing it, and they're entitled to use the road the same way the farmers and the horses and buggies and everybody else are. So
yeah, this is a stretch on Route 10, just northwest of White Heath.
Yep.
It's used a lot to be going along the Sangamon there.
Yep.
It makes a really nice way to get along the whole side of Sangamon. Otherwise, I mean, this is a gravel road here.
Right.
And this is kind of not a very good road there. So, you'd have to go clear up and around to go up there. And this is a really nice road to ride on. So people just take that 1 mile stretch and you have dump trucks coming back from the Clinton landfill passing you at 60 miles per hour with no shoulder. So I don't know, things like that. I thought I'd try to work into a resolution if people are interested in that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I try to use Strava for every trip that I make because I know how important this data is, and we don't have good ways of collecting it. So no matter how short my trip is, I try to turn it on because I think that is really important information.
My paid heat map does not show number of trips.
Oh, interesting. They don't even show categories like 0 to 10 or.
Nope, it looks exactly the same as Bill's.
Interesting.
You mean your paid Strava version?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a version
we
that
haven't purchased data.
Yeah, there's a purchase data purchase agreement that you can get through Strava. That I don't know how much it costs, but it's not the consumer paid version.
Right. Yeah, I know you can purchase the data, and it tells you that. I thought you were saying we had a city. We purchased the data. I think RPC purchased data at some point, didn't they, Gabe? Didn't we get some Strava data for one of the plans we did?
We didn't purchase Strava data. We had the Bike Moves app we were developing, and that's basically dormant until phase 2 starts when there's more funding available. But it is the idea that people, it's an app and we ask them to record trips so that we can get that data. And I think we would like to coordinate a little more with Strava.
What you can.
I was listening to some webinar recently too, where they talked about, the demographics of folks who use Strava, and obviously the Mahomet area, you're all aware. I think where people are riding in Mahomet, it's not that we're maybe missing out on as many folks who aren't using an app, but in other parts of town, we would be.
Yeah, I think it is kind of hard to use it for in town because I commutes and I know a lot of people don't use it for commutes. But I think it is good for these kind of rural recreational areas where you can see where people really don't have a lot of choice because nobody really chooses to ride on those roads if they have another choice. So you can see those little segments that they end up using because they have to. I was going to say, Shannon, on the consumer paid version, what you can do is set up a segment. We actually did that on Route 10 there. There's a segment called IDOT Build Shoulders Here. I don't know who created that segment, but that's the name of the segment, IDOT Build Shoulders Here, on that 1 mile stretch of Route 10. And if you have the paid version, you can look at the metrics on that segment, and you can see how many people overall have ridden it, because it'll go back for 5 years or however long Strava has been tracking that. So I think on that one segment, there were hundreds of people because it is kind of a cross-country route that gets used. And those are individual users too. That's not repeat trips. So
there is also bike share data. So it's not terribly, complete, and there is a lot there, but you get kind of the other side of the spectrum when you look at the bike share data. So rather than looking at Strava usage, which I think, Bill, you're completely correct, it's a certain segment. You can see a completely different segment in that usage and where it goes with the VO bike share data.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, Lily, to follow up on that comment, is what you're really seeing with the Strava and then with the VO, with the VO maps, what you're seeing is where people want to go, where people want to be, what type of transportation people would like to be using in these environments. And, you know, coming from growing up in Wisconsin, where biking and bike tourism is just an accepted manner of getting around and what people do. It's sort of frustrating for me to live here, and I don't feel safe just going out into the country and biking. You know, because now there was a white Mustang that they're trying to find right now that killed the doctor. So it's just not. Anyway, so it's just I think it's a real way to develop Champaign County in a really positive and interesting way. And again, I think all these maps show us where people want to be and how people want to be using our roads, our shared resources. So.
I think we can purchase Google data, which is more complete, and it tracks you if you have it's set to geocode you, and it does it by mode. Although occasionally I've had it think that I was biking when I was actually driving, but not very often. So it tracks that pretty well depending on speed you're going. And so I think that Google data would be quite complete in terms of the demographics, because, you know, smartphones are just practically everywhere, and people use them a lot.
Bill, is IDOT the right person to send that letter to, do you think?
I think where the crashes have been that killed the 3 cyclists this year were all either state or federal highways. And does IDOT control the federal highways too, as far as the maintenance?
They do the work, yes. Yeah. Yes, they're in charge of the maintenance. And anytime they're using federal funding, they're obligated to follow federal guidance. And it's not clear that they are following federal guidance on the issue of shoulders and rumble strips and how they're designing it.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe our legislator would be another person.
I was thinking I would like to work with IDOT to, you know, suggest a targeted approach and then take it to the legislature and say, you know, we have this approach that we need special funding to address these short segments that are, you know, where people are dying. And we'd like $50 million for the state to address these segments or something like that.
Well, but Bill, they've been rebuilding roads and not putting them in. It's not just an issue of those segments, it's an issue of them when they redo a road, not implementing current guidance.
I think it's supposed to be 4 feet. 4 feet.
Yes.
To accommodate cyclists.
Yes, because where the last cyclist, not Dr. Shu, but the previous one was killed, that was fairly recently redone, and it was not done according to the current standards.
That was Powell or Matthew up by Gifford.
Would his family be able to sue the state
I guess I was thinking of the one in Muhammad, not the little boy.
Dave Powell, yeah.
Dave.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe let me see what I can do. Maybe I'll try to invite somebody from IDOT to join us next month. I think I could swing that. I think anybody would join us and talk about how they strategize when they're planning safe highways.
Yeah, there's District 5, which oversees what goes on in Champaign-Urbana, but I want to say that they have a new head of IDOT who is a former urban planner for CMAP. So she has a background in kind of urban planning and transit-oriented, infrastructure. We're probably not going to be able to get her to come to BPAC, but from the top down, IDOT has been trying to kind of change the culture. But anyway, District 5, I think you'll probably be able to get somebody to come and speak.
Okay.
I actually used to be her intern, so maybe we could do a little bit of work on that.
Oh, what's her name, Lily?
Erin Allman.
Is that right? And what's her position at IDOT now?
So she's the director of CMAP, but she was the director at IDOT. Yeah, she's a director of planning and development.
She sounds like Lily. She'd be amazing if we could get her for, if we could schedule her for 15 to 30 minutes to zoom into one of our meetings, because she will understand strategy and implementation, and she'll understand what levers can be pulled and can't be pulled. That seems like a really exciting connection if we could figure that out, because I do think downstate Illinois really doesn't get the attention it needs directed towards this type of infrastructure.
Okay, great. Yeah, Lily, would you be willing to help us get somebody for our next meeting?
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I think that's all we had on the agenda. We have some announcements. Is that what's next? No old business. Yeah, announcements. Anybody have announcements? Cynthia?
Yes, I wanted to let everybody know that some of us are working to organize some events on November 15th as part of the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims. This is a worldwide event sponsored by the United Nations to draw attention to the high rates of fatalities on our roadways. And there's currently a group working, the Vision Zero committee of CDOT in Chicago is working on events up there. And it's actually being done in this country primarily by Families for Safe Streets. We don't have a chapter in Illinois, but I think we should have one. And we wanted to have some sort of event to draw attention to the increase in pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities that we've been having in the last 10 years in our county. So there's a group of us who are going to be meeting and talking, and I will send out information about the event. I'll ask Shelby to send it out, or I'll send it out to everybody in blind copy once we get things nailed down a little. We're hoping that some people in Mahomet will also plan some sort of memorial event. And I wanted to let you all know so you could mark your calendars. It's a Sunday. And so we'll let you know when we get ourselves organized and start working on what kind of an event we're going to have.
Okay, thanks. Any other announcements? Don't everybody speak at once. Usually we have a bunch of announcements. I guess things are slowing down.
I guess I could just share, since Sartak is not here, that Light the Night went very smoothly. It was a very successful event. We, I believe, distributed 430 sets of bike lights. The difference in the activity level on campus during the usual periods of a lot of traffic between 4:30 and 5:30 was pretty dramatic in terms of how much less traffic there is on campus. So usually we give out anywhere from 700 to 900 sets of lights. And so it was, a little more than half or around half of that amount. And considering the difference in the activity level on campus, I think that was pretty good. So we had fantastic weather. We were very lucky on the weather front. It was sunny and not hot or cold or any of the other things that we sometimes have dealt with. So it was really nice to be able to go ahead and do that event. And even though we weren't really close together, we at least got to see each other.
Yeah, cool. Okay, if there's no more announcements, are there any ideas for future topics? We have one. I asked Shannon to to try to put together something on, to allow us to have more input on the capital improvement projects for the suggested budget next year.
On this one, since we are getting a new public works director who's starting Monday, I believe, I'm gonna take that to him first, let him make that call since he'll technically be in charge at that point. So,
Okay.
So we hired somebody, Shannon?
yeah, his name is Tim Cowan. I think it's Cowan. He came from Donahue and Associates. He used to work with Bill Gray's son.
Contract. He's a contract engineer, basically. I mean, it's a.
Oh, he's the interim public works director. Okay, got it. Sorry.
Public works director, sorry. Yeah, so I mean, it's part of our mission to actually advise on capital improvement plans. That's defined in the ordinance and stuff, but we don't really seem to get a chance to do that a whole lot. What's usually the timeline on that, Shannon? Can you tell us that as far as like when you guys start, is it a continuous thing? All year round, you're always thinking about what you want to do, and then all of a sudden at budget time in February or March, you put together some ideas?
So the process this year was way different than previous year's processes. And it's pretty much completely different. Like what you guys saw at City Council, as you can know, was not at all like the one you saw the previous time. So I'm not quite sure in the current timeline. We kind of had a, oh crap, we need to get this done moment with that one. So we all piled on it. You know, there was a bunch of us and got the list of projects and, you know, was engineering downtown. I mean, a bunch of us all kind of sat in a room and hammered it out. So I would imagine in the future it should be a bigger timeline than this new system, but this was not a good representative year of giving you of what kind of time it should take.
Okay. Yeah, so just, if you can have a conversation with the new public works director and let him know that we want to try to have some input on the pedestrian and bicycle improvements planned in the capital improvement plan for next year. Or you know, prioritizing them. I'm sure there's a list, you know, we know there's a list, but you know, have us a little bit more involved in helping to prioritize that.
Yeah, Bill, I'll just mention also, you know, when we approve the bike plan and the pedestrian plan, you know, that does have recommendations in it. So I guess the issue would be we want to see how the recommended action items from those plans are being implemented through the CIP. So, you know, being looped in better on that would be great for our group.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Craig did that once a couple years ago since I'd been on. He kind of went through where we are with some of those.
Yeah, I found that to be really useful.
Yeah.
Right now, we're kind of trying to revamp the whole system, even with maintenance projects and getting things in line. So this year would not have been probably a good one to get involved in because it just was like, not all over the place. I mean, we were organized, but it definitely was a figuring out the system year. So.
Okay. Any other suggestions for future topics?
I participated in a campus safety initiative, Vision Zero. I'm not sure if that would be of any interest to have the people that are putting that together come talk to us, but it was an interesting discussion. And it's following up on a survey. They sent out a survey to all the students, but the students, they said unfortunately they sent the survey out at a bad time, COVID. And but now they're starting just sort of like having Zoom meetings and talking to people. But I thought it was a really nice approach. The whole it's just they're just talking about it as campus safety. How do we keep the campus safe? And you know, what would you if you could do anything? And you know, so I talked about, you know, St. Mary's Road and shutting, you know, different areas. I just thought that to me it was just a very interesting discussions that, because people are moving on campus very differently now, and they're beginning to see the assets a little differently now, like the necessity to being able to allow students to go for 10-mile bike rides around the campus and showing them that wayfinding, and you know, having the ability to not have all the streets open all the time to vehicle traffic. Anyway, I don't know if that's of any interest to anybody, but just let you know that's going on at the University of Illinois. It's
Sarthak might be able to.
I think he could, or Morgan White. I participated in a group yesterday on that, and during that discussion, it was mentioned that they are going to be taking a serious look at completely revamping how they do parking on campus, because parking's $2 million in the red this year because of the shutdown. And state law does not allow parking to be subsidized by the general revenue fund. So they're going to be looking at how they do that, because they really need to have market-based pricing on campus, which they currently, right now it's based on salary. So if you don't make very much money, you get a super cheap parking space. And ideas that have been mentioned for the last 15 years of giving people the opportunity to buy like 10 a pass that gives you 10 different days throughout the semester that you can park rather than having to buy one for the entire year. You know, those kinds of options, so that people don't feel obligated to get a pass, which then, you know, causes them to drive more on campus. So I was very excited to hear that that discussion is going to be happening. And SARTOC's involved in the Vision Zero, so either that, or we can get Morgan, or you know, the researcher who's involved could also come and talk to us, I think.
And, you know, we might say that these things don't affect the city of Urbana, like as if there's like some magic line, but it really does. Like if you have thousands of people driving vehicles to a location, they have to drive through your city to get there. And I prefer that those people actually, I mean, I have coworkers that, you know, will get the cheap parking, and they don't live in the city because they can just get cheap parking. And I would really prefer if these folks, you know, if they really did pay the actual cost of driving their vehicle to and from. And it is, you know, a lot of it is speed. And these are people younger than me, and they're like, nope, it's 17 minutes from here to here, and I can live, you know, and I can do this, and it's, you know, so those are the streets that I'm trying to bike on as well. And that's again how we end up with rural roads that are really unsafe. So these, you know, these little micro changes really do affect us. So Cynthia, that's really exciting to hear that, because it really, the amount of real estate devoted to parking on the campus is wow, it's just expensive, crazy.
Speaking of Vision Zero, Bill, when will our resolution that was approved at the Committee of the Whole go to City Council?
On Monday.
It will go on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay, so those of us who can should try and offer our support.
You might reinforce your support either in a letter or a brief comment. Yeah, it didn't seem to have any opposition to speak of. Never know.
That has been my experience, which is I do not take it for granted. So I intend to, I think that our experience with the Green Street sidewalk snow removal was a case in point. So I won't take it for granted anymore.
Any other suggestions for future topics? I think we'll hopefully be able to have somebody, the Pedestrian Street Committee provide a report or something by then, hopefully. At least give us an update on what's happening. We'll keep them, let's put that in future topics, pedestrian streets, so we keep it on our burner.
Aren't we going to need to talk about the Vision Zero task force from the resolution?
Yeah, let's put that on there, Vision Zero task force.
Yeah, we did have a question about that last night, and we had to clarify that we are talking about having a variety of representatives, not just BPAC members involved in that. And I also, by the way, Julie Pride at CU Public Health District said that they would be involved in this as well. So,
well, the remaining issue, maybe we'll just talk about this in the future.
Yeah,
but I know we have to have police involved as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Then we do have to have, at least Bill mentioned last night in our 3 meetings a year, that if that's what we have, as one of our BPAC meetings would be the Vision Zero task force meeting, and that those we would definitely want representatives from law enforcement and public works involved.
Yeah, that's critical.
Yeah, because these are absolutely is a city safety issue. This is about keeping citizens safe. And so it's not, it's absolutely, the police have to be there. So.
Yeah, I imagine that either the city administrator or mayor might want to be on that too. I haven't asked, but I would guess. I mean, I think as part of Vision Zero, you are supposed to have somebody from the mayor's office. Any other future topics? Going once? Going twice? Okay. All right, I think that's all we have tonight. Thank you all very much.